Chosen one, this message didn't find you by chance. This is divine timing. God led you here for a reason. You didn't click on this by accident. Your spirit was drawn to this frequency because it's a confirmation of what you already know deep inside. You weren't just born to survive. You were sent here to outmaneuver everything that was built to break you. You've lived through storms that others didn't even know were happening. You carried weights in silence. You made decisions in darkness. But what they don't realize is the same system that tried to crush you. You outsmarted it. This world isn't just physical, it's spiritual, and the enemy's plan wasn't just to hurt you, it was to make you forget who you are. But here you are, not only alive, not only standing, but ascending. You're awakening to the truth. You were chosen for this exact moment. Let's break it down into 7 powerful chapters to understand exactly how you've defied the odds and expose the system for what it really is. Before we go any deeper, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Because this isn't just another message. This is divine intelligence, a spiritual download meant specifically for those who were built to rise above the system. If your spirit resonates with this truth, type 77 in the comments right now. That number isn't just digits, it's a spiritual code, a divine signal to the Most High that you're awake, aware, and ready to walk fully in the power they tried to suppress. Most people won't make it to the end. That's how you'll know you're not most people. Only the truly chosen will feel the urgency to stay. Listen and absorb what's about to be revealed. If you stay, you'll gain insight, clarity, and the confirmation that what you've been sensing is real. This isn't content to consume. This is spiritual training. Every time you replay it, another layer will unfold. A truth you missed before will rise to the surface. Because, chosen one, your soul is ready. And this message is the divine key you've been waiting for. Let's dive in deeper. Chapter 1. They programmed you to lose, but you woke up. From the moment you entered this world, the program began. Before you could even speak, society had already decided who you were supposed to be. They handed you an identity, not one you created, but one they imposed. They told you what to wear, how to speak, what to believe, and even what dreams were acceptable. You were taught to fit in, not stand out. Conditioned to follow, not lead, indoctrinated to doubt your own inner wisdom. It wasn't education, it was training, not for freedom, but for survival within a cage you couldn't see. They fed you lies dressed as facts. They used fear as a leash. If you questioned too much, you were punished. If you obeyed, you were rewarded. Slowly, silently, they constructed walls around your spirit, walls made of self-doubt, insecurity, guilt, and fear. They didn't want you to discover your power. They wanted you to forget you had any at all. Every system played its role. School taught you what to think, not how to think. Religion taught you to feel ashamed of your humanity instead of embracing your divinity. The media taught you to chase illusions, status, beauty, fame, while quietly stealing your peace. Trauma taught you to be silent, to shrink, to question your worth. It was all by design, but something in you, something ancient, sacred, and unbreakable, began to stir. At first it was just a whisper, a quiet discomfort, a sense that something wasn't right. Even when everything looked normal, while others got comfortable in their confusion, you felt the weight of the lie. You started to notice the cracks in the illusion, the contradiction, the control, the way the world demanded your conformity and punished your truth. You didn't know it then, but that inner discomfort was the beginning of your awakening. You didn't just start to think differently, you started to see differently. You saw that the world wasn't broken by accident. It was designed to keep people broken. You saw how trauma was inherited, like a silent curse passed down through generations. You saw how people wore masks, not to hide from you, but to hide from themselves. And when the pain of pretending became heavier than the fear of being real, you chose truth. That was your moment of power. Because the truth doesn't shout, it doesn't chase. It waits patiently for you to remember. And when you did, everything changed. You began shedding identities like old skin. You let go of roles that never fit. You unlearned everything they taught you, not out of rebellion, but out of revelation. You were never broken. You were buried, under expectations, under fear, under a system that was never meant to support your soul. But even buried under all that weight, your light never died. It flickered, it struggled, but it never gave up. And once you woke up, there was no going back. Because you weren't just waking up for yourself. You were waking up for every soul who still sleeps, for every voice that was silenced, for every generation that lived and died in chains. You were chosen to break the cycle, to rise, to lead. You were programmed to lose, but you remembered your truth. Now you don't walk the same. You don't think the same. You don't crave their approval or chase their applause. You move different because you are different. Chapter 2. You learned to move in silence. They couldn't control your spirit, so they tried to hijack your focus. When manipulation failed, they used distraction, drama, chaos, opinions, guilt. They created noise around you so you couldn't hear what was rising within you, but you didn't fall for it. There came a moment when you stopped dancing to the noise. You stopped reacting. You stopped over-explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped arguing with those who lacked the capacity to meet you where you are. And that's when everything changed, because you chose silence. Not silence from fear, silence from clarity. You weren't running away. You were returning to yourself. The world taught you that being loud meant being strong, but the Spirit taught you that real strength is quiet, steady, strategic. You learned the power of sitting with yourself, in the stillness, in the solitude, in the sacred. And in that quiet, you heard your own voice again. You heard your intuition sharpen. You heard divine instructions drop into your spirit. You stopped reacting to noise and started responding to wisdom. Because real power doesn't seek the spotlight. It creates light. You no longer felt the need to prove yourself. You no longer announced your every move. You didn't broadcast your blessings or explain your healing. You moved in silence, and that's what made you unpredictable. The people who once thought they had you figured out became confused. They couldn't trace your steps anymore. They didn't know what you were working on, didn't know what you were planning, didn't know how you kept leveling up without saying a word. And that mystery, that's your protection. Because now you walk with a type of wisdom the world doesn't teach. You understand timing, you understand energy, you know when to speak and when to keep your mouth shut. You know when to show up and when to walk away. You know when to go to war and when to stay still and let God fight for you. That's not weakness, that's strategy, that's discernment, that's divine maturity. You learned not to share your vision with blind people, not to hand your heart to those who only want access. Not connection, not to water yourself down just to make others feel comfortable. You stopped moving from emotion and started moving from revelation. And that's why the system can't read you anymore. That's why the enemy can't bait you anymore. That's why your silence is louder than their noise. Chosen one, you didn't just survive the noise. You transcended it. You outsmarted the system when you learned the sacred art of keeping your peace. You stopped performing for people who don't even know themselves, and that's when you became dangerous. Not loud, not chaotic, but still like a storm before it strikes, still like a warrior before the battle, still like royalty who knows they don't need to shout to be seen. Now every move you make is covered, every decision you take is aligned, every step you walk is chosen, not by fear, not by pressure, but by purpose. Your silence isn't empty, it's full of power. Chapter 3. You turned trials into training. The system was never built to elevate you. It was engineered to break you, to bury your purpose under pain, to drown your voice in trauma, to distract you so much with suffering that you'd forget your strength. But it didn't work, because God had a higher plan. What they meant to use as a weapon against you, heaven used as a workout for you. While the system tried to use pain to imprison you, God used that very same pain to prepare you. You were being trained in silence, shaped in the shadows, molded by the fire. Every betrayal sharpened your discernment. Every rejection redirected your path. Every heartbreak strengthened your capacity. Every loss expanded your wisdom. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. You stopped asking, "Why me?" and you started asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift in perspective, that's when your training really began. Because while most people avoid pain, you leaned into it. You didn't just survive the storm, you studied it. You didn't just endure the trauma, you decoded it. You traced the pain back to its roots, generational, emotional, spiritual, and you learned. You sat with your scars long enough to understand what they were teaching you, and in doing so, you turned wounds into wisdom. That's what made you different. That's what made you dangerous. While others drowned in the fire, you learned how to breathe in it. That's not normal. That's not luck. That's spiritual intelligence. That's divine warfare. You were being trained in realms most people can't see for a calling most people couldn't carry. You realized the pain wasn't random. It was targeted because the calling on your life is heavy. The mission you carry is rare. You weren't being tested for no reason. You were being trusted with transformation. You became a warrior in disguise, a healer born from heartbreak, a leader shaped by loneliness, a prophet birthed in pressure. You learned how to walk with authority, not arrogance. You learned how to speak from experience, not ego. You learned how to fight your battles in the spirit, with prayer, with presence, with patience. Now, when trials come, you don't panic. You prepare, because you've been through too much to fold now, too trained to retreat, too chosen to collapse under what you've already conquered. You flipped the script. What they meant for harm, you turned into holy ground. What was designed to be your downfall became the foundation you now stand on. Chosen one, this is your proof. You didn't just make it through the fire made you, and now you don't run from pain, you redeem it. You don't avoid the battle. You embody the victory because your trials weren't punishment, they were training for the throne. Chapter 4. You broke out of the mental cage. The greatest prison was never physical. It didn't have bars, it didn't need chains. The real prison was in the mind. And that's exactly where the system attacked first. They didn't have to trap your body. They just had to control your thoughts. They fed you fear from an early age, taught you limits disguised as reality, taught you to play small, to doubt your worth, to stay silent and obedient. They planted seeds of shame, guilt, unworthiness, and called it humility. They trained you to believe that your power was dangerous, your voice too loud, your truth too inconvenient. But deep down, you knew something wasn't right, because the thoughts that haunted you didn't feel like your own. They were programmed, implanted, repeated, until you thought they were truth. But then you woke up. You started questioning the voice in your head. You challenged the beliefs you inherited. You stopped agreeing with the lies they handed you and started building new truth from the inside out. You realized that most of your battles weren't external. They were internal. And if you could win in here, your mind, you could win anywhere. That was the beginning of your mental liberation. You started noticing the cage, the patterns, the programming, the propaganda. You noticed how fear kept you frozen, how guilt kept you people-pleasing, how shame kept you small, and you decided, not anymore. You did what most people are too afraid to do. You confronted your own thoughts. You sat in the silence and faced the noise. You stared your trauma in the eye and said, "You don't control me anymore." You unlearned everything they taught you just to remember who you truly are. And once your mind broke free, everything else followed. Your energy changed, your boundaries sharpened, your confidence returned, You stopped settling for crumbs and started preparing for thrones. You stopped apologizing for being different, stopped explaining your vision to people who were never meant to understand it. You stopped living in reaction mode and started operating from revelation. Because when the mind is free, the soul can finally breathe. They told you who you were. You believed it until you remembered who you are. Now you know you are not your trauma. You are not your thoughts. You are not the mistakes you made while trying to survive in a world that was programmed against you. You are consciousness. You are purpose. You are divine strategy wrapped in human form. The system wanted you caged so you would never realize your wings. But not only did you escape the trap, you dismantled it from the inside out. You exposed the illusion. You rewired your mind. You reclaimed your power. Now the prison has no more hold over you because it never really did. You were always free. You just had to remember. And now that you have, you will never be caged again. Chapter 5. You found power in being different. You were never meant to fit in because you were never created to blend in. That uneasy feeling you carried as a child, that quiet sense that you didn't belong, that wasn't rejection. It was divine protection. From the beginning, the world tried to shape you into something familiar, something predictable. But your soul refused. You weren't wired like the rest. Your thoughts were deeper, your questions sharper, your emotions stronger, your vision. They laughed. They excluded you. They called you too much, too quiet, too intense, too sensitive, too weird. But what they labeled as too much was really just your fullness. In a world that's addicted to the shallow, you never asked for attention, but your presence disrupted the room. You never followed the crowd because you were designed to lead it. And yes, it hurt. It hurt to be the outsider. It hurt to walk alone. It hurt to wonder why you couldn't just be normal like everyone else. But that pain was never punishment. It was preparation. Because you weren't sent here to be accepted. You were sent here to elevate. You came to raise the frequency, to break generational cycles, to heal what others ignored, to speak what others stayed silent about, to see what others couldn't even sense. The world tried to make you feel wrong for being different, but heaven made you different for a reason. The same things they mocked you for, your intuition, your intensity, your isolation, those are the very traits that make you undeniable. Now you stopped begging for seats at tables where your presence was never respected. You built your own. You stopped dimming your light to keep others comfortable. You let it burn. You stopped shrinking your soul to fit spaces you were sent to expand. You began to own your difference, not as a curse, but as a crown. Because what made you weird in a programmed world is what makes you powerful in a spiritual one. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not too late. You're chosen. And when you're chosen, your life won't look like theirs. Your journey will feel foreign. Your path will be lonely. But that's because you were handpicked for something higher. They couldn't figure you out because you weren't made to be figured out. You were made to be followed once they're ready to wake up. Now you realize you didn't lose people. You outgrew patterns. You didn't get left behind. You were led ahead. You didn't miss out. You were being positioned. Chosen one. What made you different was your weapon all along, and now that you've embraced it, you're not just unstoppable, you're untouchable. Chapter 6. You chose purpose over programming. While the world followed the script, you chose the call. While others chased approval like oxygen, you chased truth, even when it cost you applause. While others clung to the illusion of safety and routine, you felt the fire of your calling and walked straight into the unknown. There was a moment, subtle but sacred, when the things that once excited you started to feel empty. The job title, the salary, the likes, the recognition. You had them or could have had them. But deep inside, something was still missing, and that something was purpose. That's when the shift happened. You began to feel the ache in your soul, a divine discontent that told you there's more than climbing ladders, more than fitting in, more than checking boxes in a system that was never built for your soul. You started choosing alignment over ambition, peace over popularity, obedience over optics, destiny over distractions. You started listening, not to noise but to nudges, not to trends but to truth, not to fear but to faith. And you began to rebuild your life from the inside out. This wasn't easy. It cost you things. People left, doors closed. The old version of you had to die, slowly, painfully, completely. But you knew what you were gaining in the spirit was worth more than anything you were losing in the world. You no longer made decisions from pressure. You made them from vision, from conviction, from a blueprint that didn't come from this world, but from heaven. That's how you outsmarted the system, not with rebellion, not with noise, but with clarity. While the world kept spinning in circles, you stepped off the hamster wheel and chose a higher path. You stopped following the program and started following your assignment because you realized you weren't just created to exist. You were designed to impact, to build, to break cycles, to deliver messages that can't be spoken from a stage or typed into a resume. You're not here to entertain the world, you're here to awaken it. And so you no longer bow to pressure, you no longer chase relevance, you no longer confuse being busy with being obedient. You are mission-minded now. Your steps are guided. Your time is sacred. Your voice is an instrument, not an echo. The system can't figure you out anymore because you don't move by the program. You move by purpose. And, chosen one, that shift right there, that's what made you unstoppable. Chapter 7. You became the system's glitch in the matrix. You were never meant to rise. The system wanted you to blend in, to obey, to never challenge the status quo. It wanted you to be predictable, controllable, replaceable. You were meant to be just another cog in the machine, easy to manipulate, easy to break, easy to discard. But you didn't fit. Something inside you resisted. Something deep in your spirit refused to be tamed. You couldn't accept the lies, the restrictions, the chains of conformity that bound those around you. Instead of bowing down, you stood taller. Instead of staying quiet, you started to ask questions. Instead of living a scripted life, you began to write your own story. And that is why you became the glitch. A glitch is an error in the system, a flaw that disrupts the expected pattern. You became that error. You became the unexpected variable that the matrix wasn't programmed to handle. You became the disruption in their design, the interruption in their control, the weakness in their power. You became the living proof that the system is not invincible, that it can be outwitted, that it can be defeated. You didn't just survive the system's attempts to break you. You thrived despite them. You healed wounds that were meant to keep you down. You overcame betrayals that were meant to make you bitter. You transformed pain that was meant to destroy you into fuel to power your rise. You restored your mind and your soul, breaking free from the mental cages that held so many captive. You learned to walk in your power, not in rebellion, but in divine authority. By rising, you exposed the cracks in the system's foundation. Your success without compromise, your peace in the midst of chaos, your clarity in the face of confusion, they all confuse those who tried to keep you in line. You became unpredictable. You became unbreakable. You became dangerous to the system because you refused to be controlled by fear, shame, or doubt. Your existence challenges everything the Matrix stands for. You remind the world that divine purpose cannot be programmed out. You prove that spiritual truth cannot be silenced. You embody the reality that the unseen realm still governs the seen. Your life is a testament that heaven's power always overrides the forces of darkness. Now the system sees you as a threat. It trembles because you refuse to be confined. It fears because your light exposes its lies. It fights back, trying to distract, deceive, or discourage you. But it cannot stop what is destined to rise. You are a force of nature, a spiritual earthquake shaking the very foundations of control. You did not become the glitch by accident. You became it because you chose to wake up, to see through the illusions, and to walk a path of purpose rather than programming. You are not a mistake. You are a message, not a glitch, but a divine interruption sent to awaken others. Your journey is far from over. Each step forward disrupts the system further. Each breakthrough inspires those still trapped in the matrix to question and rise. You are a leader, not just of yourself, but of a movement toward freedom and truth. You did not simply escape the system. You dismantled it piece by piece with wisdom, faith, and courage. You rewired your mind and spirit. And in doing so, you rewired the destiny of those around you. You are the glitch that cannot be fixed, the code that cannot be rewritten, the system's greatest failure. And in that failure, you find your greatest victory. You didn't just survive the system, you outsmarted it, you rose above it. You became the very thing that causes it to fail. And now, chosen one, your mission is clear: to lead others out of the matrix, to be the beacon of light that guides the lost, to build a new reality founded on truth, freedom, and divine purpose. You are no longer a victim of the system. You are its overthrow. Chosen one, this message was a mirror, a reflection of what your soul has known all along. You were never ordinary. You were engineered by heaven to disrupt the narrative. So don't question your journey. Don't downplay your battles. Don't shrink your power. You outsmarted the system. And now it's your time to rebuild a new one rooted in truth, love, healing, and divine purpose. You didn't just survive, you won.